It is our privilege to have you join us today for our very first Tech Talk, Optimizing Citrix HDX for Work from Home Use Cases. Please help me welcome today Michael Shuster, CEO of Ferroque Systems, James Shu, Principal Product Manager at Citrix, Todd Shu, President of Ferroque Systems, who'll be joining us today for our moderator, and myself, Amber. I look after the marketing here. Michael is the CEO and founder of Ferroque Systems and is a recognized Citrix authority in North America. Michael has sat on Citrix's consulting team as an architect for over half a decade as a consulting partner and has led many of Citrix's most significant consulting engagements. As well, he contributes regularly to Citrix's leading practices and documentation. James Shu is a product manager focused on end user experiences in designing, building, implementing, and operating end user computing and workspace solutions. He specializes in Citrix core products, emerging software, and hardware solutions integration. James has over 20 years experience in software technologies, integration, project implementations, and practices development. Todd is one of the earliest pioneers of Citrix solutions in North America who built one of the most successful Citrix practices in the world. His business was acquired by Citrix in 2012, after which point Todd led Citrix's consulting organization in Canada for 5 years. Today, Todd joins Ferroque as both president and partner.
Right.
Hold on, I need to change the audio settings. It was working a minute ago. Yes, it's good now. Hold on, your video, yeah, it froze. Awesome. Well, I'm sure that many of those images were very familiar to you over the last year. It seems that that was the reality of 2020, and hopefully we're looking to make some improvements with our video technology in 2021. What we're really looking for is something that's reliable, clear, concise, and consistent, a unified communication that works. That's the goal. As many of us can attest to, the global pandemic has put significant strain on how many organizations have been conducting meetings and delivering voice solutions for end users outside the traditional office. Many of us have been using audio and video conferencing solutions for years in the office as a sensible solution for in-person meetings, and they've grown in popularity over the last decade. On account of the pandemic, there has been a mass escalation in use of such platforms in order to limit in-person contact, or as part of the evolving trend of accommodating more distributed workforces working outside of the office. From regular office workers to call center staff, there's been a shift in how people work over the last year to keep businesses operating. But what happens when your organization is unable to shell out for new laptops, for newly minted remote workers on account of budgetary or security constraints? Many organizations resorted to adapting a BYOD, or bring your own device strategy, to keep costs down, or issuing thin client devices to end users to minimize the added cost, or having significant portions of the workforce transition temporarily or permanently to a remote work modality. And although these are great solutions, the right digital workspace solution is needed to ensure sensitive corporate data is kept within the network while ensuring the delivery of services, including VoIP and audio-video collaboration software, continue to work just as well in the standard office setting. This, of course, introduces numerous hurdles, from dealing with last mile considerations and bandwidth availability within employees' homes, to adequately optimizing and tuning the digital workspace delivery platform, which often will host such applications such as softphones, Microsoft Teams, Cisco, Jabber, and WebEx, Zoom, and the like. As the world's inventor and undisputed leader in the digital workforce, we know today Citrix has been innovating on this front for a long time, including partnering with vendors such as Microsoft to help optimize audio and video delivery. In today's session, we'll be focusing on the multimedia optimization capabilities of the Citrix HDX technology stack to enable customers to enjoy a rich multimedia experience while using Citrix and hosting these types of applications within the Citrix environment. Today, we'll be looking at what HDX multimedia is, unified multimedia solutions, Microsoft Teams optimizations. We'll take a look at some frequently asked questions, a decision tree, some optimization tips, and a case study. We'll close with questions and answers. So if you do have any questions along the way, please feel free to type them in the chat. We'd really appreciate that.
All right, thank you for that, Amber. Appreciate that introduction and the overview there. So let's talk a little bit about what HDX Multimedia is. So HDX in of itself, as many of us are familiar with, is a suite of technologies that Citrix has bundled in and integrated into the overall solution stack. It's a subset of capabilities of HDX. That's what HDX Multimedia is. And it's focused on improving the acceleration and performance of multimedia playback and content within a Citrix session. And this isn't necessarily just multimedia in the sense of a video that we're playing or YouTube or anything like that. It also applies to audio and webcam redirection and optimization capabilities therein. Related to those flows. The goal of HDX Multimedia is has a number of different goals actually. Number one is it seeks to reduce the VDA side CPU and network utilization by optimizing data flow and compression and via codecs and things of that nature. And then it also seeks to improve responsiveness and therefore the user experience of audio and video for end users during a Citrix session. In addition to that, HDX Multimedia is the foundation of Citrix's real-time collaboration and optimization capabilities. And this is what the main focus of this presentation is taking a look at the different optimization packs and options that are available for customers that use different unified solutions, technologies in the environment. We've got a slide on that next. And then last but not least, one of the newer features to the table in HDX Multimedia is browser content redirection, which James will touch on very briefly, and we could probably do an entire webinar on that. But browser content redirection is a bunch of intelligent logic that allows us to redirect elements of a web page rendering off the Citrix session and onto the local user device in such a way that it looks seamless, but also reduces load on the backend servers, can improve responsiveness of the browser session as well and the content, and help with single server scalability. And all right, let's talk a little about the unified multimedia solutions for a bit. So as I mentioned in the last slide, Citrix, the HDX Multimedia functions is a foundation of Citrix's commitment to optimizing and working with vendors on optimization packs for unified communication solutions. And there's a number of different partners and integrations or whatnot that Citrix has done over the years with different vendors, including, of course, Microsoft with Skype for Business and Teams, but we also have other mainstays such as Cisco Jabber and Cisco WebEx, Zoom optimization packs, and even as of very recently this month, even RingCentral now has optimization pack capabilities. Some of these optimizations require additional client and server components to be included in your overall solutions. Others, such as Teams, it's actually baked, the optimization is actually baked right into the products themselves. Unlike, let's say, the Skype for Business optimization, which had a separate optimization pack that we had to deploy. The goal of these optimization technologies for unified communication solutions is to move beyond the audio and video optimization capabilities that exist within HDX and therefore can be optimized within the ICA channels, and actually move to take those audio and video streams and have them route through a different path that is outside of the ICA channel, which allows the vendors of those products to potentially provide a better optimization capability versus having that traffic flow through the ICA channels themselves. And then in some cases, the ICA channels just get used for signaling of SIP connections or whatnot with the application itself using the ICA channels, but audio video isn't traversing them for those optimized applications. That is not the only solution, of course, and James will walk us through some decision tree matrices that show us different types of unified communications apps and what type of engines they use to optimize. And with that, I'll hand it over to James to give us a rundown on some of these unified communication optimizations, how the general architecture works with Citrix.
Thank you, Michael. So what we're going to start with is actually, making sure we understand terminology, right? So in terms of product, Citrix typically categorize optimization in two ways. One is that we call it optimized unified communication or optimized multimedia solutions, which means that the actual media engine runs on the CWA client or Citrix Workspace app instead of running inside the VDA. So these are what we call the optimized solution. And occasionally you see documentation calling out is what we call non-optimized solution. So when it's non-optimized, means that your audio video streams are being redirected through virtual channel back up to the VDA, and the application runs inside VDA will handle all the communications. So there are different type of application today. Some software vendor might have optimization plugins to collaborate with Citrix virtual desktop environment. Some of them don't, and we have always have a fallback mechanism to accommodate them. So in a later section, when we talk about different decision trees, we're going to focus on these different type of categories and how do we handle them when the optimized solution is not available. Okay. All right. So one of the hottest topic these days, I think, judging from our early, survey poll, as you can see, Microsoft Teams is getting quite a bit of attention, from our customer base today. So from that, we collaborate with Microsoft very deeply, starting from the old days of Skype for Business all the way up to now. Actually, earlier than that is a link optimization packets, how far we are working with Microsoft. Now, back in those days, we have a sort of plug-in optimization model, and now the newest option that we're doing now is basically making sure that all the necessary plugin is already incorporated in our CWA client. So the beauty of this is that, as long as you have the right version of Citrix Virtual App and Desktop releases on the VDA side and the client, you will get Teams optimization turned on automatically. So it makes it a lot easier for customer deploy. Basically just install, for example, the VDA client version 1906 or higher, and then the Citrix Virtual App and Desktop client, starting from 1907, or Linux Workspace app, the version 2006 or higher. So these are the sort of minimum requirement for the releases. And if you want the latest and greatest feature, you can always upgrade to the latest version of CWA client so that you can get the latest and greatest feature. And I'll talk a little bit about those in a little bit. So there's a Mac client as well. I forgot to mention that. It's So so the beauty of this is that there is no client-side plugin. So unlike earlier we mentioned that it's a Cisco, WebEx, Zoom, these third-party software, they require a vendor plugin that installed beside the VDA, inside the VDA, and also alongside with the CWA client. And that requires you to install the right version, also matching with the version runs inside the VDA. So customer need to pay attention to that. Now with the Teams, we take on all those. So all the real-time communication protocol will be executed from our CWA client, and inside the VDA, we create all these redirection capability for Microsoft to basically remotely control our CWA client. So that way, customer don't need to worry about versioning. We actually enable disable features based on feature toggles. So depends on what the client capability, and we will turn on and turn off some Teams optimization features for inside the app. Yeah. So the actual engine that runs inside CWA client is WebRTC based, and which is an open standard. And that actual engine can also potentially be used for other third-party vendor as well. So we have a unified communication SDK program currently live for some WebRTC-based real-time communication application vendor to adapt. Currently, we have already over 10 different companies that is working on the solution. So in the following year, you're going to see some vendors starting to presenting feature sets that's just basically going to work inside the VDA just by turning on a switch. Yeah. So endpoint and VDA needs internet access is very important. So starting from since we're using WebRTC, a lot of older solutions require a customer to connect back to the data center to get the audio video code to work. We no longer need that anymore. All right. So so the endpoint devices will need to have directly connected internet in order for the signaling and also all the media call, the RTP call, is going to go through the internet as well. So it's very important that the customer realize understand that the endpoint devices need to have direct internet connection in order for these to work. Yeah. And if you have, obviously heavy user of these multimedia calls, it's important to have one of those devices that Michael is showing. This is actually our newest device. It's SD-WAN optimization. So we can actually tunnel the audio video call directly through the client devices instead of going through our ICA channel. And SD-WAN can also help you optimize those transmission as well. So and also provide redundancy, which is also very important. Sometimes your home Wi-Fi might be a little bit questionable, and you can actually switch over to LTE or the cellular network in case you have any outage in your own internet provider at home. So for mission critical condition solutions, to also integrate that into your endpoint as part of the optimization too. All right. So that's starting with some fun questions. Right? Let's look at the what is the common asked question. Yeah. So the common question that we get from customers is that when Teams has different flavors. We have a Windows version, I have a Mac version. There's also a web version of Teams, and recently Microsoft also released a Linux version of Teams as well. Okay. So VDI actually is the fourth category inside the Microsoft Teams client product as well. Now the Teams client depends on the version. They have different feature sets. Okay, some of the features that are released a little bit faster in the native version of the Teams. Okay, so for customer who wants the latest greatest Teams functionalities, you can deliver them in VDI format using our audio video redirections, which means that using non-optimized solutions. Okay, so that you will get the latest and greatest features. However, you will actually have to take on some of the resource consumptions that comes along with these non-optimized formats. Okay, so your call will be initiated from VDA. Your video engine need to be redirected from the client side up to the VDA and then join the call. So a lot of decoding of the video and media streams will be inside the VDA as well. And if you look at the settings, you will see that on the top of the version information, you show no optimization mentioned, right? So that's kind of the sign that you see that your client either it's not compatible with the optimization, or you have chosen to use a non-optimized version of the Teams. Okay. Now, if you have the right client install, here's what happens. So if your client devices is on the right version, okay, you're not using, let's say, an Android client connecting to Android tablet connecting to your virtual desktop, then you will get the Citrix HDX optimized logo showed up in your version information. This means that Microsoft detected that you have the proper client configuration in the server VDA settings, and it automatically switch over to the optimized mode. Now with this mode, you will see some of the functionality or feature set might be different from the native version of Teams, but your user call and the audio experience and video experience will be optimized, and it will render on the client side. Okay. Now, the other option that we have seen in the field is that some of the customers say, hey, okay, I have this occasional use of Teams. So my user is not always on Teams, but when I deliver a virtual desktop using PVS, I don't always want to upgrade latest version of the Teams install media. I want to just give user have access to Teams if they need to, right? So you can actually, in this case, we're leveraging a solution that we had earlier called the browser content redirection. Okay. So you can actually create a shortcut to Microsoft, to the Chrome browser or even Edge browser with the app switch available. So you can turn on app switch, which will turn the actual web app into its own window, and basically removing the the URL bars and all that, so makes it looks like a native applications. And you can combine that with BCR, browser content redirection, and will trigger these website actually get rendered on the client side. So when you do that, the user will actually get Teams UI, but it's rendered inside a browser. It can be redirected to the endpoint, still achieving some optimization experience. Or you can choose to run it directly inside VDA. If you're using it only for like chat messages and stuff like that, you can leave it running inside VDA as well. So there's, these are the three, kind of options you can deploy Teams inside your environment.
Especially over the last year, we've had a significant number of questions that have come up, especially from a bunch of different customers, of course, all different industries, as they're making more significant moves into running with audio and voice audio video optimization with Citrix or other similar technologies in play. So when we start talking about HDX multimedia and necessary and needed capabilities in order to deliver on what we need to deliver on in today's new paradigms and whatnot, the first question that we get quite frequently is how important is the characteristics of the client endpoints that we're going to choose, whether it's a laptop or a workstation, thin clients, Windows IoT devices, and in addition to that, how important is that endpoint having any type of GPU in it, whether it's discrete or whether it's built into the CPU? How important are those two things?
Yeah, so I think the let's separate it in two different categories. So the client device, number one, it's going to be used for media decoding. So your audio stream, video stream is going to be decoded on the client side. Okay, so adequate amount of CPU is very important, especially we have now a pretty wide range of devices. The other thing is that not all the devices has Teams optimization built in, or some of the optimization pack is not available those platforms. So you do have to check on devices. For example, I'll give you an example on ARM-based devices, right? So today in ARM-based device, we don't have Teams optimization pack built in. So they're relying on only the audio video redirection. Okay, so you do have to pick. Sometimes it's not just getting a device and say, okay, has CWA client installed, so automatically I'm going to get all those features. You do have to check the client device capabilities. And the other thing is that on a lower end client devices, typically they only have like maybe 2 cores, and very low frequencies. They might not be able to keep up to like multiple video stream running at the same time. So when you're using Teams optimization, now we have 2x2 videos now, which means that you get 4 simultaneous video stream can be decoded on the client at the same time. So occasionally you have some of these lower end client might struggle if they don't have GPU to offload and they don't have high capability CPUs or multiple cores to offload these capabilities. Sometimes you see that user experience will suffer, right? So picking the right devices for your use case is very important. Yeah, especially nowadays we're talking about offloading. Yeah, in the past, if you want to deal with these type of situation, the other fallback is that when you have a lower end client devices, then you might want to fall back to using redirection method, which the server side will have to take some hits on the resources as well to accommodate it. Yeah.
Cool. All right, and we're going to dive in a little bit on just that what you mentioned there in terms of falling back, or if we've got voice and video solutions that do not have those optimization packs available for them, we have to fall back and use HDX audio and multimedia optimization within the Citrix stack. And I know we're going to cover that a little bit later, but in general, when a customer is coming to you saying, hey, great, listen, I know you've worked with a large one recently where they're using a piece of software that doesn't have an optimization pack, what are the high level recommendations that we're making to those customers when they want to get the best possible experience for, in particular, their audio applications, but they do need to leverage the HDX multimedia functionality that's inbuilt?
Yeah, so the common thing that we see for audio tuning, the common mistake we actually see in the field is that customer want to always deliver highest quality audio. So they set the policy to be high quality, high quality audio. Inside HDX today, if you use high quality audio, there are some features that will be turned off. One of them will be like, echo cancellations, right? And also in terms of optimization path, for UDP audio as well, that's also going to be impacted if you turn on the optimization to be turn on the audio quality to be high. So some of these components you need to be very careful. And the other thing is that it's a little bit mismatch. When you hear the audio in high quality, but you don't necessarily want to capture audio in high quality, okay? Because on the microphone, for the speech use cases, most of the time we don't really need those high fidelity audio to be returned back to the VoIP applications. Voice application actually use very low frequencies, so you can actually get away with even low quality audio, and you can get a pretty good user experience as well. Okay, so that's something that we see, quite commonly people make mistake on the HDX audio codec. And the other thing that I want to mention is that use UDP audio when possible. It simplifies your configuration a little bit. If you don't have UDP audio, we do have some workarounds for some clients that doesn't have that capability, which we're going to cover a little bit later as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So on to the next question: why use meter or low quality audio redirection? I think we've got that answered. The two reasons for setting it is, number one, to get the echo cancellation capabilities, and number two, that's what's going to enable UDP audio. So if we're setting it to high, we're not going to get UDP audio. It's going to fall back to TCP. So it's an important consideration there.
Yeah.
Obviously, with a lot of folks being forced to remote work, where they otherwise may not have been before, and many people live all sorts of different areas of the world, right? You may be working for the most high-tech company ever, but you may live out in the boonies or a field somewhere where you're lucky if you can get 5 meg internet or satellite internet. So
right.
Obviously this can pose some problems, especially when an entire workforce is being transitioned to work from home, and you've got a very disparate set of internet capabilities amongst your staff. So can you give us a little bit of guidance or input on the importance of client internet access constraints within these types of solutions?
Yeah, so with optimization, obviously our traffic, our audio traffic and video traffic are directly handled from the client devices. So the client devices internet connectivity has become very, very crucial, right? So they need to make sure that if they can have multiple redundant routes, will be fantastic. If that's one reason why you want to employ the devices that you just showed earlier, the SD-WAN devices, which allow us to sort of optimize the path, and then also provide redundancy path if the audio is impacted by one network, it can switch over to the other, right? The other thing is latency consideration. If you're directly connected to the internet and then calling it out of the internet, I think that is out of our control of the path. So they'll be using SD-WAN to improve it. The other possibility is that you might be running an audio redirection scenario, right? So which means that the client devices is reliant on the ICA protocol, the ICA protocol, to carry the actual audio stream back up to the data center and then process it and then connect back to the audio applications. This happens quite often in like soft phone scenario, right? And a lot of soft phones, you can deal with low quality audio. So the first thing we recommend customers to do is make sure that they enable low quality audio settings so that they can deal with the they can handle less bandwidth, especially your upload bandwidths usually are capped at a lower rate versus your download bandwidth in most of the home internet access. So you want to make sure that you maintain that audio stream low bandwidth consumption when you are redirecting the audio back up. And so this camera as well, we want to optimize it as well using optimized webcam redirection instead of using USB webcam redirection, because in some cases customers are doing that on a high latency and network that become unusable. Okay. Now the other thing I want to mention is that if you use UDP audio will be preferred. In some cases your client device might not be able to support it. If you don't have this capability of doing that on a Linux client, for example, we have a feature called the audio latency control. So that's a feature you need to turn on the Linux client. over the module.ini file. So if you are looking at your thin client device, you might have to manually type in some of the configuration there. However, once you turn it on, what it will do is basically when your latency started to show up, the audio doesn't get queued up inside the VDA, sorry, the CWA client, and we will try to purge them so that the user don't get all these dead signals padding in between the audio stream. So it's very important that if you have a thin client and you deal with a high latency environment on Linux platform, you turn down the audio latency control.
Gotcha, great. Yeah. And there are a number of key points there as well, not only for the internet access, but just with regards to high latency networks as well. I mean, one thing that we come across not all the time, but often enough, is Citrix as a protocol is very optimized. It's one of the reasons it's been a champion in the screen remoting space for decades now. It's just how efficient it is, and over time it's just gotten more efficient in terms of its bandwidth utilization. But when we start throwing voice and video in the equation, your average user session that could be on average just without voice and video 80 kilobits a session, maybe on the higher end 200 kilobits a second there. You're doing voice and video, it can be in the megabits, which is why there is a critical consideration point there when you're looking to support these more robust multimedia capabilities on consumer internet links that just may not, those end users may not have that capability if they're running lower quality links and might need to boost that up with their provider or whatnot. Moving on to high latency networks, I think you've hit that quite well in terms of optimization and tuning that we can do. There's a few things you can do in Citrix policies, and even the tuning of the TCP profile on Citrix gateways if they're going through, also very popular to do. And yes, you did touch on this. Citrix has been a leader in the SD-WAN space for many years now. In fact, it's actually one of the backbone components of the Azure SD-WAN service. But these devices here are designed for home users to optimize and make more resilient your end user experience by having a backup link using an LTE connection in addition to the user's broadband or DSL internet connection. They're fantastic for that. When we touch on another important thing here, especially as we're getting more critical services running on Citrix in these scenarios for voice and video, especially in call centers or whatnot, the question that has come off a fair bit is, how do we monitor how well these sessions are performing, especially with this added load on them and the need to sort of peer in and get a good handle on how is that call quality over Citrix? So what are you typically recommending to customers or advice you can give in terms of folks that are looking to get a better handle on their overall performance?
Yeah, so monitoring performance it's a very common question that we get. Actually inside our HDX protocol, we have various tools like the connection quality indicator. I think a lot of people have tried it installed inside the VDA. All these were able to help you understand the end-to-end stack, the connectivity status for the Citrix connections. Now there is also a hidden tool that comes inside the VDA installers, okay? So if you are getting into our install media, you will find a utility called HDX Monitor. Now, HDX Monitor, there's also a version that you can download directly from our support website. However, the one that comes in your media actually have a component in there that allow you to monitor the WebRTC stack as well. So which means that Teams optimization can be monitored in there. You can actually see the WebRTC's connectivity status. Some of the WMI counter are being exposed there as well. So it really can help administrator kind of gain some insights of what the user are doing in their environment. So those are the tools that we have. Obviously, there are also some additional stats that you can get out of SD-WAN devices. The SD-WAN device also has some monitor capability as well that can give you some additional data stats about how your data are transmitting between the endpoint and the call statistic. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I'll hand it back over to you to talk about unified communication decision trees, depending on the applications that management has asked us to throw into Citrix.
All right. So let's start with our first item here. Okay. So one of the more modern application now we see in unified communications are starting to turn into web-based applications. So tool like Google Meet and Twilio and some of the other web-based real-time communication application is starting to show up. Also Zoom, they also have a web browser-based product as well. Okay, and Teams also has a web browser-based product. So web-based product is starting to get quite a bit of attention in a lot of deployment strategies. Some customers are using web-based client as a way to kind of quickly get into delivering the unified communication app, and sometimes we're using web-based application as a fallback, right? Because sometimes we don't have the right client installed in our VDA, so you can't really stop people clicking on a URL and not launch the session. So sometimes they cannot install the plugin. So what do? You let them launch it through the web browser. So and then a lot of time, in order to optimize the web-based unified communication app, we will leverage what we call the browser content redirection, which will redirect these sites to the endpoint. And by doing that, they can render the actual call directly using the endpoint's browser, as long as they have the right client. So today, browser content redirection is supported in Windows and Linux platform. Okay, and if you don't have these two platform clients, you will be falling back using audio and webcam redirection. Okay, which is like if you're using, let's say, Linux client, sorry, the Mac OS client, for example, and you're dealing with the web-based applications, browser content redirection is not going to work. Then we'll fall back using audio and webcam redirection running inside of VDA. Next one. Now the next one is I would say like our more modern version of redirection, right? So the current Citrix solution is based on what we call it in general called RTP app, okay, real-time transport communication applications. So these are applications that utilize the open standard WebRTC stack, and the Microsoft Teams is one of the forefront example of it, which means we can run Teams in the optimized format with the right version of a CWA client and the VDA. There's no plugin installed. We will detect whether or not the right combination of clients exist, and then user can basically enjoy the redirected optimized format. Optimize the team call directly using our CWA client. Now there are also a set of unified communication vendor are joining that program, so they're starting to optimize them, and you will see in the second half of this year there's going to be more and more company that are starting using this. One of the example I would say is the RingCentral. Today they have their RingCentral app already have a Citrix Unified Communication SDK implemented for their audio call. So you can check on the Advanced tab inside the RingCentral app. You'll find Citrix Optimize, which you turn it on, then your call will be conducted through Citrix Optimize RTC engine and using the client-side audio engine instead of running inside a VDA. And if you don't have the right client, then we'll fall back as well, just like the other ones. Now the last one is virtual channel plugin. Now this virtual channel plugin, is also a very common solution that we see. So you have Zoom, Cisco, WebEx, VXME, Skype for Business also consider that. These virtual channel plugin has been there for quite some time in the industry. And the most important thing you need to think about when you're using these virtual channel plugin is that you have to deploy the right version of the VDA install client and the matching client version plugin on the endpoint. So when you have a mismatch, then these applications might have some issues. So the important thing is you need to make sure you check with the manufacturers, and you need to have end-to-end control of the client-side plugin install as well, not just installing the latest version of the plugin on the VDA. You also need to make sure you keep up with the client update as well. Sometimes if the client mismatch, then the user will not be able to get the results that they need. Okay. So things to consider. So let's go through some of the options, right? The number one thing that we recommend customer to do is look at the latest version of CWA client features. Okay, if you want the latest version of the functionality of Teams optimization, also for the any unified communication using WebRTC stack, you want to make sure you install the latest version of CWA client so that you get those feature sets. The client itself, a CWA client for Windows, do have the auto update capability built in today. So, and we have monthly updates. So basically, whenever there's a new version of CWA client, your client will notify you, unless your administrator turn it off, then it will update the client automatically. Okay. Then the other thing that you want to think about is Linux client. So Teams optimization today are being updated on the Windows first, and then following months will be Linux and then Mac. Now I also want to mention Linux version is only x86. Okay, so we haven't updating Linux ARM version of Teams yet. So we need to we're working on that, but at the moment there's no Linux ARM-based Teams optimization. Okay, so those devices will be falling back using audio redirection at this time. Next, yep. So unified application plugins. Some of them have plugin for your operating systems. So typically you see Windows optimization plugin and also Linux optimization plugin that's been distributed by the vendors. And you need to check with the thin client vendor, especially for the Linux side, to know that you have the right version. For the native cell phone, typically you have a native client, so they might not use the plugin at all. They would just require you to run the native unified communication app on the client side, on the cell phone. All right, the last thing I want to mention is for the media redirections and audio. So these are the couple items that you need to think about when you are deploying these optimized solutions in your environment. So start with the choice of codec. Okay, so choice of the media delivery method. So audio redirection, you want to enable UDP audio, as much as possible. Okay. Now it's not always the case that your CWA client can support UDP audio, through gateway services. So for example, Linux client today, we only support inside the data center using UDP audio, but when you are outside the data center, the UDP audio functionality is not available. Okay. So you do want to see if you can use UDP audio whenever it's the case, if you're using only pure audio redirection. The second thing you need to think about is webcam redirection. Webcam redirection today, Linux version of CWA client only supports 32-bit applications. So if you do have Linux thin client out there in your environment, you need to think about the version of the actual unified communication application you install inside of VDA. It need to be 32-bit also, okay? Because today, like let's say Teams has two versions that they offer in the download page. You have the 64-bit version and also 32-bit version. If you have endpoint devices that is rely on the webcam redirection, Citrix CWA client for Linux on ARM devices, they can only redirect 32-bit webcam. Okay, so if that's the case, you need to support. Then you do need to make sure inside your VDA you deploy only the 32-bit version of the client. Okay. Now, and sometimes that also be the case. You might need to install 32-bit version of the browser for those customers who are dealing with web-based applications, unified communication app as well. So you need to think about some strategy there if you have those devices that cannot support the webcam redirection. Okay. Windows and Mac today support both 64-bit and 30.
If we need to fall back on HDX audio and optimization, video optimization within a Citrix using Citrix HDX configurations, i.e. everything's going to be optimized within the ICA channels, not optimization packs taking it outside of, as James has just been covering off a lot of. A couple of things here. First and foremost, we lead with enabling HDX adaptive transport in your HDX policies. Current versions of Citrix, this is on by default. Older versions like 7.15 or whatnot, it was there, but it may not actually be, the default wasn't to have it preferred and enabled. But we want this to ensure that both voice and video and just the screen scraping on Citrix is actually occurring over UDP, which has some more robust capabilities over the traditional TCP method. Next, ensure that we're tuning, as we've harped on a few times before already now, ensuring that our audio quality is set to medium, which is required for RTP over UDP. It also may suffice on low after piloting, but as James and I have mentioned before, it's also important for echo cancellation functionality. Next, ensure that we've got audio over UDP real-time transport enabled in your policies as well. And also please do ensure that you enable user and computer multi-stream settings. Last but not least, and this is pretty critical in these scenarios, is ensure that the Citrix audio service on your VDAs is set to real-time, and you can do this a couple of different ways. One, you can use Workspace Environment Manager, which is a super awesome tool that many Citrix customers have access to. Amongst many things that it can do, can help configure your services and change the priority order on them. Or you can do this via script or perhaps even a scheduled task that would activate and ensure that this setting is set to real time. Do make sure if you use something else like a script that you monitor it and make sure that it stays real time, it doesn't default back. And please do not set your audio application to real time as well. Just leave it at the Citrix audio service as real time just to avoid any potential conflicts. Moving forward, let's talk a little about network for UDP audio and EDT and whatnot. First and foremost, please do not run your Citrix sessions, be it for voice and video or just Citrix in general, over VPN. Especially if you've got gateway capabilities, we want to reduce the use of VPN in general. I mean, in this day and age, it's no one really is in favor that I've come across of extending the corporate network into people's homes. So first and foremost, please don't use VPN, and especially don't use it for voice and video use cases. Many VPN solutions have been found to perform suboptimally or actually impact the quality of these voice and video sessions if the Citrix session is traversing a VPN. Next up, if we do want to use these UDP audio and then EDT functionalities, whenever we're drafting firewall rules now for Citrix ADCs or endpoints that are going over to VDAs that are in different security zones, we want to make sure that in addition to TCP 1494 and 2598 is open, we also want to make sure that UDP 1494 2598 is open, as well as UDP 16500 and UDP 16509. And that's important on internal network between the client, the VDA and the client endpoint, but as well between the Citrix ADC subnet IP, if you've got on-prem Citrix ADCs, out to the VDAs, the back end there. We also need to make sure that if we are an on-prem Citrix Gateway customer, that UDP 443 is open for Citrix Gateway and that your gateway does have DTLS enabled with the supported cipher. There's currently about one cipher that's officially supported for DTLS traffic for workspace apps, so we have to make sure it's there. It's often missed, and that could be one of the reasons it falls back to TCP. Next up, tuning and toggling the TCP profile on Citrix Gateway. So for customers that are using an on-prem Citrix Gateway, a critical consideration here is going to be ensuring that we at the bare minimum, you're testing with your XenApp, XenDesktop TCP profile bound to the virtual server. A lot of customers that build them by themselves forget to actually attach that. Therefore, you're falling back on the appliance's default settings, which may not be optimized for Citrix Gateway. And sometimes you may need to tune a custom profile to accommodate for different scenarios, such as accommodating buffer configurations or maybe a more or less aggressive TCP algorithm or whatnot. To help with different use cases for users. In this one instance, we actually used a different WAN profile, not the XAXD TCP profile, but a WAN profile on the appliance attached to our Citrix Gateway, because for a use case where we ended up having to fall back on TCP audio instead of UDP audio, it actually did make a difference for a customer who was using Linux endpoints over the internet. And as mentioned before, evaluate SD-WAN. So for those critical use cases or in circumstances where you are encountering some challenge getting reliable link qualities for your end users, and if they aren't able to influence that by working with their ISP to get an alternate solution or increase the bandwidth or whatever the case may be, do consider looking at these things. They've become very popular, and Citrix has been one of the leaders of the pack here in actually developing home office size devices that are for that specific use case to optimize the reliability and link quality. Yes, there's a cost, but when you factor in the cost of users not being able to be as productive as they could be, they start paying for themselves quite quickly. Moving on over to devices, so there's a couple things here. Number one, endpoint selection is critical. There's a lot of great options for endpoints out there, both full systems, Windows, Mac, Linux, workstations, laptops, whatever, to Chromebooks and to various types of thin clients, either running Windows IoT or Linux-based thin clients or Windows-based thin clients. But the thing we have to remember here is that systems that are running Windows will have the most feature-rich capabilities, because that's, as James mentioned, is where a lot of the current innovation comes from, and then it trickles down to later versions. As an example, if you're running a Linux endpoint, that in Linux endpoint can do UDP audio if you're direct connecting to the VDA from the client, the thin client to the VDA, but it cannot do UDP audio if you are running over a gateway. So, and right now Mac does not support running UDP audio over a gateway, either direct or not. So it's always important to make sure that you're continually referencing the Workspace app feature matrix. It's a PDF that's available, that's a living document, it's continually updated to make sure you're on top of this. So that ties into ensuring that the Workspace app version that you're looking to target and use supports UDP audio. So those first 2 points are kind of go hand in hand. And last but not least, James has referenced this in a couple of other slides, but making sure that if there is the ability to tune the device side audio buffer on your device, such as a thin client device, you may want to do that. So the maximum you can tune them is maybe 0.5 seconds. There's other parameters you can configure that can increase bandwidth utilization, and James is also touching on some of the INI capabilities.
The other item I want to also mention that on the thin client, it's not always that you're handicapped because you don't have UDP audio, right? There's also solutions we have what we call audio latency control, which will give you similar to UDP audio capability, which is dropping the audio streams when there's interruption that's happening on the network stack. So these are the things that we'll provide you with the tools to do it. It's just that in thin client you might have to do it differently.
Gotcha, good point. So TCP audio, not all that bad, or UDP audio, not all that bad. All right, so I'll hand it over to you, James, to talk about use case here and wrap up.
So here's an example of a contact center use cases where we have a lot of customers doing that today, right? So there's like thousands of virtual desktop that used to be running inside a data center, but because of pandemic, they all turned into work from home users overnight. So how does these companies prepare for the scenario is that they actually have the on the VDA side, they install the 32-bit of a client, softwares, and also they have implemented, the solution with a variety of ICA clients, right? So they'd be shipping some of the thin client inside the data center to users' home, so allow them to access it from that. And the other thing is that they can also using the existing devices that the customer already have. And then have them connect back up to a data center through Citrix. So and they have a variety of custom applications and also unified application that is used by the business or by the customer of their contact centers. So they in this case they really have used all kind of mixed devices and mixed softwares, right? So and to have the right devices configuration and the right server-side VDA deployment, you can actually still deliver all these comparable user experience, throughout. And this is one of the examples that they have, these customers have done and then able to achieve.
Thank you. You guys did a great job. You zipped through a lot of information in a relatively short period of time. So thank you so much. You guys did great. It was It was very informative. Thank you again for joining us, taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. And for those of you who shared your mailing address, check your mail soon because you'll be getting your very own Ferroque mug and some beer from a distillery here in the Okanagan Valley. So thank you again and have a wonderful day.
Thanks
All
all.
right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, bye.